Hey there, everyone. This is going to be a kind of a response video, I guess. Johnny Millenium put up a video of his like top 20 favorite movies recently, and I thought like I haven't talked about movies on my channel like ever, maybe, and maybe I wanted to do a response because I thought it seemed fun, and it it'll be fun. I think it'll just be good. I've never talked about it, but I have a huge movie collection. It's not, I guess it's not super huge, but it's like like 600 DVDs or so. It's not, it's respectable. But like my game collection, it's split between two countries, so I don't have as many here. So there's a couple in here that I haven't rebought from my U.S. collection yet. So in these lists, there's two in here that I probably should rebuy, but I just haven't gotten around to it. But yeah, let's first get into these movies. So this will be my top 20. It's kind of in order, but you know, it's hard to do this list. Johnny was saying in his video that like it's hard to do this list. Like you have so many movies you want to talk about, but you can't put them all in the top 20 for obvious reasons. Um, and I had that same problem where I just have like so many movies that I would be like, I feel like, oh, I really want to put that in, but I can't because it's just like there's only so many movies that can be in the top 20. 20 is actually the number. But yeah, this is just going to be it's sort of in order, but these can probably be swapped around pretty liberally except for like the top 5 or so. So, yeah, but let's hop into these. My first movie on here is going to be Repo Man. And now, Repo Man, it's got you can see Emilio Estevez is the star here, and it's if you've never seen Repo Man, you really should see it because it's kind of like a weird punk rock science fiction kind of movie where all the characters are crazy and there's like weird shit going on all the time. There's lots of weird ass characters and like there's no logic to it. Just like weird shit happens for weird reasons. The ending is weird. Everything is weird. But it's like feels punk. You know what I mean? Like it's made in the '80s and like the circle jerks around the soundtrack and stuff. It's good. It's good stuff. But man, Repo Man is like a. If you've never seen it, you really should watch it because it's a treat. And it's not like it's kind of like a cult classic at this point, I think. But if you really, I mean, I think like maybe a lot of you haven't seen it, so definitely check out Repo Man. Don't let Emilio Estevez scare you off. He shows up again in this list too, actually. The that Emilio Estevez showing up in all my top movies. Not in the next one though. The next one is actually Hellraiser. On UMD. I actually have it on. I have it on Blu-ray also, but I thought like it's more fun to show the UMD because I have a ton of these UMD videos. If you can see like where this Peko is, this Peko-chan statue, it's like on piles and piles of UMD movies. It's like tons of them. But this is Hellraiser. Hellraiser is not even my favorite Clive Barker movie, but it's a movie that kind of I saw when I was pretty young. I saw it pretty soon after it came out, so maybe not 1988 when it came out. I'm pretty sure it came out in '88. Let me check. Doesn't say. Just take my word. We'll guess it's about '88 that Hellraiser came out, and I didn't see it in the theater. I saw it on video, so it had to come out on video at some point after it came out in '88. So probably I saw it in '89. So I would have been like in '89. I would have been what 11. That seems about right. But I saw it and I was really into horror as a kid, and I still kind of am. But like ever since I was like 6 or 7, I was like watching horror all the time. And Hellraiser was one of those movies that like I have a couple where like I used to stay at my aunt's house over the weekend sometimes, and it was cool because like they would let me rent a movie when we were over there and we'd all watch it, and like I got to pick the movie, so like whatever I picked, that's what we watched. And occasionally I'd come out, most of the time I would pick some weird ass horror, but like when I picked the time I picked Hellraiser was if you've never seen it, there you imagine that like Pinhead is on the cover here, but he's in the movie like 10 minutes maybe. It's like almost nothing with him. He's like not a major character. I mean, he's a major character to the story, but he's not like in the thing in the plot for most of it. He shows up like at the end, and that's it. So he, he has a main thing on the cover, but like the story is much more. Um, it's got like lots of sexual bits, and there's like a dude with no skin running around killing people for most of it, and it's the kind of thing where obviously it's inappropriate for children, but so I'm at like 11, and my aunt and my uncle are watching this, and they're like not enjoying it. Maybe they're just creeped out by it, like and I think like I was really loving it though. I really like Hellraiser because it's different than your kind of standard 80s horror movie. It's not like a slasher movie. It's not a kind of you know like a Friday the 13th ripoff or something, or like some kind of goofy 80. There's other goofy 80s horror movies in this list coming up, but it's not one of those. It's very serious. It takes itself very seriously, and it's kind of got this weird kind of S&M bondage thing going on with it that's really interesting. And the aesthetics of it are really good. The way the story plays out is cool. It's just really interesting. It's like the kind of thing where it creates its own world, and enough of a world to like make a million sequels that get progressively worse for the most part. Um, but yeah, Hellraiser is definitely one of my top movies. Um, just for the reason that it left such a big impact on me originally. Um, but yeah, let's look at the next movie. The next one is a Japanese movie called the Japanese name is Rampo Jigoku, but the English name is Rampo Noir, and Rampo Noir is like it's four short stories made into a movie, so they're not connected, but it's four short stories by Edogawa Rampo, who is like a kind of horror mystery writer from the like late 1800s in Japan, maybe early 1900s. I don't remember when Edogawa Rampo was around, but he was like really influenced by Edgar Allan Poe, and he wrote lots of kind of detective stories that involved some kind like murders and things, but also like some kind of strange situations would happen where it's very Poe-ish. So when you look at it, it's kind of like you know imagine like a kind of Japanese style Edgar Allan Poe stories. But this movie, it's got what's his face? I can't remember his name, which is sad because like he's one of my Asano Tadanobu, who or Tadanobu Asano in the English order, is a great in this movie. And he plays multiple parts in different parts. So like in one story he's like the famous detective, and then he's in another one he's like the villain. So it's kind of cool. Actually, he plays a part in 3 out of the 4 stories, I think. It's a really good movie, though. It's very stylish and well put together, and it's dark. And all the stories are originally that way, but this movie captures them really well. I think I've seen a bunch of other movies based on Edogawa Rampo stories, and this one just really does them justice. Like, and it's the kind of thing where it's put together so well that when you see it, you can't help but not have like visceral reactions to things that happen in the movie. Like they're very like graphic, but not in a way that's like, oh, there's lots of blood and guts. It's kind of like graphic in ways where you're just like, you get squeamish. You're like, oh, I don't want to, oh, stop. That's that kind of thing. And I feel like it does such a good job. And I really like Edogawa Rampo, the writer. So this movie just hits all the right spots for me. So it's definitely something I watch every once in a while, and I'm like always willing to show people it when they come over. Not many people want to watch it, obviously. It's not exactly it's not exactly good party viewing material, but it's a good movie. Next is a movie that it was in Johnny's list also, but that's a Big Trouble in Little China. You can't go wrong with this movie. It's a classic. I think like if you were a certain age in the 80s, you watched this movie, and everybody loves this movie. Like, I don't know anybody who doesn't like this movie. And the thing about it is that it's got so many quotable lines, and like when you see like Mortal Kombat characters are kind of based on characters from this. Like, Raiden is basically like one of the guys from this movie. Um, but there's also like so much interesting stuff going on. It kind of creates it again creates its own kind of mythology, and creates all types of interesting things going on in the background. So, but it does it in a way that like it's easy to understand, but you also kind of get the feeling that all this other stuff is going on in the background. But also the characters are really cool and interesting and fun, and the whole tone of it is really kind of goofy action, and it does it so well that you can't fault it anywhere really. And man, John Carpenter, if I had thought about it more, probably would have had more John Carpenter movies in this list. This is the only one, I think. But he does so much good stuff. I could probably retool this list if I thought about it more. And and in this case, I just kind of went to my DVD shelf and pulled stuff off really quickly, and this one just happened to be in there. But man, John Carpenter has done so many good things. But the next is another kind of horror movie that I think most people probably haven't seen. It's really interesting to me, but I think most people either have not seen it or have just written it off as garbage. And this is The Stuff. Now, if you've never seen The Stuff, do yourself a favor and just look it up on YouTube. It's fully on YouTube. You can just watch it. But it's sort of it's like a horror comedy, but it's not so comedy that you can't take it seriously. It's just goofy in kind of like it's a parody, sort of. Like, you look at it and you feel like this is kind of a parody of those kind of movies like The Blob or something, but it doesn't play like a parody where it's just goofy jokes. It plays like it's a serious kind of, it's trying to really make one of those movies, except being just a little tongue-in-cheek about it. So it's like trying to make one of those movies, but in a way that it's in on the joke. So it feels really good. And this is a movie, The Stuff, basically like it's about killer yogurt or something. Like, you can't, what are you going to do with that? Basically, it's yogurt that people eat and become possessed by and turn into. That's it. But like, and it, that sounds ridiculous, and it is. Like, the whole plot is ridiculous. The way it progresses is stupid, but you can't help but not like it because there's so much goofy, interaction with the characters. And the main character of this movie, his name in the movie is Mo Rutherford, is such a great character, I think. Like, he's such an interesting kind of character. And I don't mean that in the terms of, like, he's a character in the movie. I mean, like, he's a character in that he's, like, intentionally kind of a dick. And, like, he pretends to be a kind of an idiot on purpose. So, like, the thing is like, he kind of is playing this kind of clueless country dude, but he's really not. He just kind of makes that kind of impression on people, so they kind of let his guard down around him, and he can do what he is. He's like a corporate saboteur or something. And, he's going around, and he's been hired by the ice cream companies to take off the stuff, which has been cutting into their profits. It's really goofy. I've said goofy like a million times, but it is. That's like the best way to explain this movie, because it tries to take itself seriously, but it's kind of not doing that at all. And there's lots of interesting kind of special effects in this movie where they're, like, people will get punched in the face and their whole face will come off, that kind of thing. And, the stuff is basically like, there's points where people just get covered with giant vats of yogurt, basically. That's the best way to explain it, I think. It's that kind of, it's all practical effects, and it's really interesting. So if you haven't, look up The Stuff. It's on YouTube. I checked that earlier today. So check out The Stuff if you haven't. Next we've got Sin City. Sin City for me was one of those movies that I thought was just great. When I saw it in the theater, I was kind of blown away by this movie. Like it's so stylish and so kind of well put together. And the thing with Sin City is that when I was young, I read Sin City the comic, and when I saw the movie, I thought this is such a good adaptation of a. It's probably the best comic adaptation I've ever seen. Oh, it's almost word for word the same as the comic in some parts, at least. Like the Marv parts. Like if you read the comic, it's basically the same. Like his lines in the movie are essentially the same. So the this is like maybe the best comic adaptation I've ever seen. It's done so perfectly, and the action in it is great, and the way like it's all put together. I think like Robert Rodriguez, this is his best movie, no hands down. Like nothing comes close to Sin City, and the sequel I liked also, but it doesn't quite meet this one, and this one especially Marv's story is really good to me. But I like the way they all cross over. And if you get the special edition, it's again I'm showing you the UMD, but I have the special edition back there somewhere, and it has like the different way the movie is cut, where it's cut chronologically, and it's pretty interesting that way too. If you watch it chronologically instead of at the way it's actually cut in the theatrical release, it's also interesting because there are things that happen in the story where other characters show up after they're dead in the story that you've seen them. So like you can tell, oh, this is the past. But I wish they would make a full cut of both movies where they're cut chronologically so you can see where they are, because in the second movie Marv is still alive. So it's that kind of thing where it would be cool to see that. So yeah, Sin City, I think most people have probably seen it though. Next movie is The Breakfast Club. And I think, again, this is a movie, like, if you were a kid in the 80s, like, basically, you liked all of these movies. The kind of John Hughes teen movies, there was a bunch of them, and everybody watched them, everybody liked them. It was that kind of thing. Just, everybody watched these movies. And I watched them and I like them. And especially The Breakfast Club is the kind of movie that I can watch a million times. Like I know all the lines. It's that kind of movie. And most of these movies I know all the lines actually. It's just the kind of thing where I've watched them all a million times because they're just so entertaining, and you can just put them on as background noise and be happy with what you've got. So, man, The Breakfast Club is easily one of those movies. It's the kind of movie where, like there's a lot of movies that I liked previously that I've gone back to and thought like, well, that doesn't hold up. But The Breakfast Club is the kind of movie that does hold up. It's still interesting, and it doesn't really date itself, which seems weird because like it is kind of a teen movie from the 80s, and you'd think like, well, that's going to be really dated when you look at it, but it actually doesn't turn out to be, because it's mostly like based on kind of personality types rather than like the styles that they're wearing. Like they're all wearing pretty generic clothes and stuff. So it's really, it still holds up pretty well. And not all of John Hughes' movies stand up still. Like, if you've ever watched, like, 16 Candles, that doesn't really hold up anymore. But Breakfast Club does a pretty good job of being still relevant. Next is a movie that I think most people have seen and look back fondly upon, or just never seen. But it's probably most likely that more people have seen it now since it started to get really popular. But this is a movie I've been a fan of since I was a kid, and that's A Christmas Story. Now, A Christmas Story is obviously about Ralphie here trying to get his a Red Ryder BB gun for Christmas, and the whole movie. Let me talk about this because now I'm trying to remember who. Oh yeah, Gene Shepard is the dude. So the narrator of this movie is Gene Shepard, and he's also the writer. If you didn't know, Gene Shepard used to have a radio show, and he used to kind of like play pranks on people and tell these kind of like interesting stories on his show. And he wrote a bunch of books, and A Christmas Story is part of like compiles like a bunch of stories from his books. And there's other movies in this series with the same characters. Like, if you ever seen A Christmas Story, you'd think like, oh, that's a story that is interesting. I like those characters. I want to see more of that. And they made A Christmas Story too, but don't watch that. It's garbage. But there are other stories that involve the characters at different times, played by different people, obviously. But there's like a movie called Ollie Hopnoodle's Vacation Bliss or something. Like, maybe it's longer than that. Ollie Hopnoodle's Vacation Bliss or something. And it's like basically Ralphie and his family go on like a summer retreat for like a cabin or something for the summer at a lake. And it's that kind of story. There's another one that's like Summer Story, I think it's called, where it's just like a bunch of short stories. Again, it's an adaptation of the short stories of Gene Shepard. And I read those books. I've read all the Gene Shepard's books. And like, if you can search for his name on YouTube, you can listen to some of his old radio shows. But he's played pranks on the general public with his thing, like, because he had a late night radio show, and he convinced his listeners at late night to like call in to bookstores to pre-order a book that didn't exist. And like, what he did was he had them all call in and pre-order a book that he just made up. And like, because the show was at late night, like normal people who work during the day aren't going to be listening to the show, so they'll not be in on the joke. And they got enough people from the listeners of the late night show to pre-order the book that it got on a bestseller list without existing. Which is like the kind of thing where like it's exactly his kind of sense of humor, Gene Shepard. And he, again, he's the narrator. So I'm just really like his stories, and I think Christmas Story is the best one of the movies that take directly from his books. So that one is definitely a must see. I'm sure everybody has seen it though. It's kind of like a Christmas staple at this point. And like before I left the U.S., I remember there was like 24-hour marathons of the Christmas Story, just played on a loop for a whole day. Everybody has seen it, I think. But the next movie here is a movie that I think most people probably haven't seen. And this is Beautiful Girls. Now, Beautiful Girls is made by Ted Demme as the director. It's kind of like I don't know how to explain it, because it's not like a coming of age movie, but it's more like a like a midlife age movie. I don't know how to explain that, because like it's essentially like some guy is going back to his hometown for his like 10-year high school reunion, and he's meets up with all his old friends. He's like moved to the city and he hasn't seen everybody, and he comes back and like meets everybody that he used to be friends with, and like gets involved in their lives again. And that sounds boring, but it's actually like really interesting, because all the characters are really likable for the most part. And even the characters that are not likable because of their personalities are doing a good job, because like you don't like them because of their personality. It's not like they're boring. Nobody is boring, at least. And I think all their interactions play off of each other so well that you when they do shitty things, like you kind of expect it. And you realize like these people aren't perfect, and they're going to do shitty things, but like they're still all friends, so they all stick together and do their stuff. So, but it's kind of funny, it's got drama, it's got interesting stuff going on, and it's a kind of movie that I think it can, maybe if you're like a middle-aged dude like I am, you can probably get something out of it. I think it's an interesting kind of thing to think about what you're doing with your life and what kind of things you're doing with your relationships and whatever. It's I'm not doing it justice, because like it's hard to explain, because that's really what it's about. But the way all the characters interact is really the kind of gold in this movie, and I would really, really suggest watching it if you have the option to, because Beautiful Girls is such a good movie, and like I've never hear anybody talk about it. It's got Matt Dillon in it, and Rosie O'Donnell and Uma Thurman, and a very young Natalie Portman. She's like 13 or something. So if you're a Natalie Portman fan and also a pedo, you can totally get into this movie. Moving on. Next we've got... next I wanted to talk about a movie I don't have a case for. And it's a Korean movie. that is the kind of thing where, like, when I first saw this movie, I watched it and then I thought, I gotta watch it again immediately. I gotta watch this again. I can't just sit here after this. I gotta watch this thing again. And the movie it's a movie called Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. It's part of a trilogy, and I think it's possible that Old Boy is the second part of it. Um, but I'm not remember. I might be not remembering that correctly. It might be a different movie. But I know there's Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, something else, and then Sympathy for Ms. Vengeance. But Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance is the one that is really stays with me because it's a kind of an interesting story where it's really dark, and it starts out where all the characters are at this really low point in their shitty lives, and you think like it can't get any worse for these people. How is this movie going to play out? And it just gets worse. Like you think like you can't imagine how these people's lives could get worse. And the movie is essentially it getting worse and worse and worse. It just never gets better. It's the most depressing movie ever. But it's so interesting. And when you think about it, there's parts in it that are like incredibly dark but funny. So, for example, in the movie, there's a guy whose sister is dying of cancer, and they don't have any money to pay for a doctor. So she's just horribly in pain at the house. Like, and she can't, they can't do anything. And he's like trying to work all these jobs and get money so he can like get her treatment or at least money, or at least drugs, so she's not in pain all the time. And, like she's in the house all day in horrible pain, and she's like groaning and like just like making noises like horrible like pain noises, but like the neighbors hear her through the wall, and they think it's sex noises. So like there's these dudes in the next room like jerking off to the sound of her sex noises, which is really just her dying of cancer. And like it's that kind of thing in the movie where you the whole movie is really dark and serious, but there's things like that where they're taken totally seriously. It's not played as a joke. But when you watch it, you think like this is got layers. It's got a lot of layers that are interesting, and you're just going to go through and you're going to think like, "Oh my god, I got to watch this again because I know that I'm missing something, because it's got goofy parts where things are kind of really dark comedy, but it's so dark that you could miss it." And I thought like after I watched it, I thought I must have missed some of those parts because this movie was harrowing. Like it's that kind of thing. And but I definitely wanted to watch it immediately again, so I did. I watched it twice in a row the first time I saw it. But yeah, I don't have the case for it because that's one that's in my US collection, and it's the kind of thing where like it's hard to find again without buying online. But I'll get it again eventually, or I'll just take my copy from the US when I go back again. But next we've got less horrifying movies, less less depressing movies. We've got two by the same director, but we'll start with the first one here. It's Starship Troopers. Director's Paul Verhoeven, and Paul Verhoeven was on like this awesome streak when he was making movies. There was a point where Paul Verhoeven like could do no wrong. He just made so many good things. But Starship Troopers is kind of the kind of thing that I associate directly with Paul Verhoeven. It's got all these kind of weird little commercials and all this kind of tongue-in-cheek political commentary going on in the background against like this sort of cartoony, sort of strange, sort of science fiction. I mean, it's definitely science fiction, but sort of like, exaggerated, corny kind of thing where it's like, if you imagine like the 1950s, how Fallout does the thing where it's, like this kind of parody of 1950s style things. Starship Troopers does that very well. And, all of the ads and things are these kinds of things like that. And I think it works so well when Starship Troopers, and like if you've ever read the book, Robert Heinlein's book, Starship Troopers, it's similar. It's not really different, but it's doesn't have the same, kind of silly veneer over it, which Paul Verhoeven does so well. And you can tell how good Paul Verhoeven is that he does it in a way that makes the movie work. Because if you've seen Starship Troopers 2 or 3, those suck. They're so bad. And they don't do much to change the formula. They're trying to do the same thing, but they do it so poorly that it just makes the movies terrible. But Paul Verhoeven takes it in the original Starship Troopers and does it just perfectly. He gets everything right to make the movie really interesting. So definitely check out Starship Troopers if you haven't. Next, we've got another Paul Verhoeven movie. You could probably guess it from the way I just talked about Starship Troopers, but it's RoboCop. I know RoboCop has this image of being like kind of a goofy superhero movie, but if you've seen like RoboCop 3, I could see where you would be lost in there. You're just like, I saw a RoboCop cartoon. It's weird that there was a RoboCop cartoon. If you've ever watched RoboCop, it's really over the top violent. And it's representative of the kind of dystopia that's the kind of future cyberpunk world that's RoboCop exists in. And it's, like unlike other kind of dark cyberpunk movies, it's a bright cyberpunk movie, which is really kind of makes it stand out from the other themes. And the cyberpunk theme was really strong in, when RoboCop came out. It was like kind of a popular thing. Other movies made it more popular, and RoboCop took it and took that kind of near future kind of dystopia kind of thing where corporations are stronger than governments, and the corporations can do whatever they want basically, and the government is too weak to stop them. So like in RoboCop, there's the giant corporation OCP is basically trying to like cheat the government out of the whole town. They're trying to take over Detroit, and they're doing shady stuff. It's a very cyberpunk kind of setting, but it's also got lots of kind of again, RoboCop, like Starship Troopers, has a lot of those little commercials spliced into the movie, and the commercials do a lot of things with the movie that make it interesting to just have a kind of world building thing without being really overt about saying the world is fucked up. And there's a lot of ways that the world is fucked up in RoboCop, but the way it gets across more than just Detroit as being terrible, because like, let's be honest, Detroit is fucking awful anyway. Like now, not even in like near future RoboCop world, it's shit now. So it's easy to think like, oh well, future Detroit is more shitty than it is now. That's not so bad. But like in RoboCop, there's all these kinds of these commercials for the game show. I'd buy that for $1 guy. Like, that kind of thing. Like, you can tell like the whole society is fucked up because that show they show many clips of it. It's all like sexy women with big tits, and then like then there was I don't know, some kind of like the SUV, the SUX 5000 or whatever it is. Maybe it has a different name. The number is probably different, but the giant SUV, that kind of thing, that kind of stuff is really done well. And it also takes the kind of themes of body modification and upgrading people with technology, that kind of thing that is prevalent in a cyberpunk movie, and moves it in a different direction. It doesn't like take it in the same way that other movies do. And I think it makes it kind of cartoony, but not cartoony the way that it's for kids, because RoboCop is definitely not for kids. If you have kids and you're thinking like, I should show them RoboCop because I remember it being cool, it's super bloody. Like people's limbs get blown off, and there's like all types of like people getting like splashed with horrible acid and shit, like that nuclear waste and stuff. And that might not be in this movie. That might be in the second movie. I don't remember. Um, but you know, like the characters are awful. There's like all types of sort of horrible murders and death and blood in this movie, and I think it does it in a way that's where it's bright and comedic. So when somebody is dying, like you're kind of like, oh, it's a funny thing that that robot totally malfunctioned and killed that guy in a horrible way. You know, that kind of thing happens in this movie, and I think like again, this is like the power of Paul Verhoeven because you know, later RoboCop movies got. I mean, two was all right. I think RoboCop 2 does a pretty good job. It's not as nowhere near as good as RoboCop 1, but RoboCop 3 is just like the shark jump. It's not that good. And I watched all that. I like RoboCop 3, but it's nowhere near as good as even 2. And then, I mean, RoboCop gets a jetpack and shit. It's dumb. Uh, but there, you know, then there's like the RoboCop TV show, and there was a RoboCop cartoon, which is weird that there was a point where rated R movies could be made into cartoons for children. Does it seem strange to you? Could you imagine that happening now? Um, yeah, I don't know. So I'm gonna move on to the next movie. The next movie here is one that I think it's a Tim Burton movie, but I think a lot of people probably wouldn't pick this Tim Burton movie as the one they'd want to put in their top 20. But for me, Ed Wood is one of the my favorite Tim Burton movies. I mean, I like a lot of Tim Burton movies. I was gonna put Pee Wee's Big Adventure in here too, but I got edged out. But Ed Wood, man, it's such a good movie. It's based on a book. It's the book is called Nightmare of Ecstasy, which is kind of like talking about the life of Ed Wood, and you know all the kind of weird shit he did. But the movie doesn't go cover the entire book. It just covers like the earlier years of Ed Wood, whereas the later years go into the book goes into all the like the porn shit he did later on. Um, but Ed Wood, this story is really it's done so well. Have you ever seen any of Ed Wood's movies? The way they recreate them in this movie, it's so good. It's done in such like with such care and such kind of love for the way that they're put together. And you know, Johnny Depp is so good in this movie as Ed Wood. Um, he's really sympathetic, and you feel for him, even though he's like, you know, a miserable fuck up, and his stuff is terrible. You want him to win, even though like, and you know what happens to Ed Wood. It's a true story, but like, you still want it to work out good for him, even though like, you know, it's not really going to. But he does manage to get, you know, he manages to make movies, so I guess it does work out for him in some sense. But just the kind of weirdness, the how he was shooting movies, like that kind of thing, so great. And the way that they played all these characters in the movie is just, you know, the way they all kind of interact, and the way like you get to know even like the weird side characters that are just kind of in the background. You kind of get to know who they are through this movie. And I think um I mean, I've watched it a million times. It's the kind of thing where like um the way that, you know, like playing how Bela Lugosi is in this movie is like it's spot on. It's so good that when you watch the recreation in this movie of the Ed Wood movies, and then you watch the actual Wood movies, the actual movies that they're showing, it's almost the same. It's so perfect, and it makes you it makes you want to be there. I don't know how else to explain it, but Ed Wood just does things that are is so good. So next we've got Goodfellas. Now, Goodfellas is a movie I think everybody has seen, and I like Goodfellas is the kind of movie that it's so well shot and well put together that it's easy to like, and it's the kind of movie that I'm, you know, if people are into straighter movies, and I'm straighter, I mean like not horror or like weird comedy or stuff like that, I would be like, okay, let's watch Goodfellas if you've never seen that, because that's the kind of thing you should see. And universally, everyone likes Goodfellas when they watch it because it's the kind of thing where, you know, it plays out so well. Where like the beginning is like high times, everyone's exciting, you like those characters, they're, you know, even though they're fucking awful people, you know, you get to like them because they're, you know, they're high, they're they're winning. They're the winning side, and you want to like them, even though like they're shooting people and stealing shit. That's all they're doing. Um, but you get to like them, and then the second half of the movie is like their fuck up. They get fucking wiped out. They just get destroyed. So their lives get all fucked up because of all this, obviously because of all the shit they've been doing. So like people get killed, people get sent to jail, that kind of stuff. And like, compared to the first half of the movie, and it's so good that the way, it builds it up and then just knocks everybody down in such a way that they should, obviously, because everybody is like a kind of an awful person. But it's kind of such a well put together story that in the way everyone playing their roles here, like Ray Liotta is so good as the main character, and then you've got like Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci, and all the people that are playing your main characters in this movie just end up being so perfect for the parts. Like, I couldn't imagine anybody else in the parts for the Goodfellas. So like it's just so well put together. So yeah, Goodfellas. Next we've got Little Shop of Horrors. Now, Little Shop of Horrors is a horror musical about a giant plant that eats people, and this is definitely my favorite musical. I like all the songs from this movie. I like how the characters are. I know all the songs by heart. I know this movie by heart. I like I just like so much about it. It's got that kind of campy 1950s feel to it that's done so well. And I think maybe there's a theme here, because I've said that a bunch about a bunch of these movies where it's got that kind of campy feel, and I really enjoy that. It's the kind of thing that when in Fallout does it so well, which is one of my favorite gaming series too. So that's a thing for me, I guess. Campy 50s feel. But this movie does it perfectly, and you get the feel of it, and it's got such funny stuff. It's got a lot of the former kind of SCTV, Saturday Night Live people in here. And man, it's just, this movie, seriously, if you haven't seen Little Shop of Horrors, you really should, because it's funny and goofy and got all types of interesting characters. That, like, the dentist is so good. I love the dentist in this movie, the sadistic dentist who wants to torture patients. His song is good. He's got a little dance in it. It's great. So so good. Man, Little Shop of Horrors is just top notch. Next, though, we're gonna move on to something else. This is a David Cronenberg movie. My favorite David Cronenberg movie. Not that more should probably be in here. Like, I'd probably add Existenz, maybe The Fly also. Jeez, those are really good. Existenz is like a gamer movie though. But my favorite David Cronenberg movie is Videodrome. Of course, Videodrome. If you haven't seen Videodrome, shame on you. But like, also, you really should. It's weird. It's got like all types of strange things going on. It is another kind of cyberpunkish movie, but it's more like body horror than kind of mechanical horror. So it's got weird kinds of kind of sadomasochism themes going on. It's meant to like show how different the society is in the future, where like it's all about like crazy sex TV and like torture shows on TV, stuff like that is what he wants to put on the network he's making, because it's the kind of thing that people will watch. And he wants to see, this is James Woods is the main character, and he's like trying to figure out what Videodrome is, and he's runs into this weird cult and all this kind of strange body modification stuff, and weird things start to happen. And it's the kind of thing that if you watch it once, it's the kind of movie that you'd watch and you'd think like, what the hell did I just watch? and what the fuck is that? What the fuck happened? I don't even get it. So, but it actually turns out that Videodrome is very interesting. It's very deep. When you watch it and you think about the things that are happening and why they're happening, it's the kind of movie that is just perfect for multiple viewings because every time I watch it, I still pick up new things and I still think of. Um, it's got a lot of kind of great themes to it, and it's also got great effects, great kind of um, practical effects going on in this movie are so good, and the way they look, there's like kind of he grows a giant like chest vagina or it's fucked up. You should definitely see it though. It's crazy and really interesting and really the kind of thing that you would want to watch in you know multiple times just to figure out what's going on. And I have a lot of movies that I like that. Not that any of them are upcoming, but there's movies that I would mention. I'd like to talk about it probably, but not in this list. Like things like Donnie Darko and Southland Tales is another really underrated movie, I think. But actually, there's a movie that I forgot to add into this list that would definitely be in here if I had remembered it. It was in Johnny's list too, but it's Brazil. I didn't add it to the list here though because I don't have my DVDs here and I just forgot. But Brazil definitely should be in here because it's one of my favorite movies. It's definitely that would actually probably be in the top 5. But so maybe Videodrome might have been number 6. But yeah, so good. Videodrome, watch it. Just watch it. Long live the new flesh. That's the. But next movie is another one. It was on Johnny's list, but it's lower on mine. That is Blade Runner. This Blade Runner. This is the box set. It's like this briefcase box set. It's got a lot of stuff in there. But Blade Runner is maybe the perfect cyberpunk movie. There's no better cyberpunk movie that captures just the essence of how like the kind of William Gibson world should look. It looks perfect. It does such a great job kind of building a society and in just the way that you kind of get an idea of how the corporations work, how society is, how and you get it like ambiently. You don't get it. They don't straight out tell you like, oh, the world is this way in this year. Or this is there's not like a paragraph before the movie starts. They do it very organically through through things that you can hear on radios, through things you can hear other characters say. You can learn about the world, and it's kind of like a master class in world building. And the story is like a slow build into greatness. So, I think a lot of people watch it now and they think like this movie's kind of boring, but I don't think people understand what a revelation Blade Runner was when it came out. And in the 80s, it was like the movie. It was the cyberpunk movie. Like if you were into cyberpunk, you were usually into it because of Blade Runner. And I mean, that's kind of an over-exaggeration because cyberpunk is a literary movement, really. But, it became like this kind of thing where it was popular in popular culture. It got big. So, and Blade Runner was like a real strong kind of reason that it got big. When you had stuff like Blade Runner out, it was new. And like it got popular enough for there to be TV shows. And even those, like the character Max Headroom is part of a cyberpunk TV show, and that got huge. It was like in Coca-Cola commercials, and it was everywhere. Max Headroom was everywhere for a little while, and it was, I thank something like Blade Runner definitely for not only the world of Max Headroom, but also like the reason that stuff became as popular as it did. Blade Runner is like just such a good movie that if you have any interest in like the kind of theme of cyberpunk, you should definitely watch Blade Runner. there are other movies that I would recommend for cyberpunk, but Blade Runner is like a must watch. Like you can't not watch it and say like I'm a fan of cyberpunk. So it's definitely had a huge impact on the kind of things I like too. And like even for a long time, the cityscape of in Blade Runner, just a picture of it was my desktop picture at work for years. Um, so that kind of thing it's so good. But the next on my list, I have another one that I don't have the case for, but it's a movie called Akari Midai, which translates to Bright Future. It's a Japanese movie. It's sort of it has Tadanobu Asano Tadanobu in it, who is not a main character. The main character is played by Odagiri Joe, who is another famous kind of Japanese actor, but he was also the first Kamen Rider, not the first Kamen Rider, but the first um, uh, the Kamen Rider Kuga, which was kind of the restart of Kamen Rider. But he became like a famous actor, and in this movie, he plays like this kind of like listless dude whose friend dies, and he's just kind of floating through life, like he's just drifting through life in this weird kind of way, and he kind of it's like a really it's not an exciting movie. There's not any like real excitement, but it's made by one of my favorite Japanese directors, Kiyoshi Kurosawa, who is not Akira Kurosawa or related, but he's made a bunch of horror movies like Pulse and Cure and stuff like that, and those ones are all really interesting to me. Doppelganger is another one he made. If you've seen those are all really good too. But Akari Midai isn't a horror movie for the most part. There's things. It's kind of like just like a weird ambient movie where like it's just slow paced and there's nothing quite happening, but it's got this tone to it. The way that the movie is put together, the kind of overall tone is, just this dude who is, kind of aimless. He has nothing to do with his life, and he was kind of not doing anything, but he had his friend who was helping him out, and his friend dies, and he doesn't have anything to do. He doesn't know what to do with himself. And his friend shows up in the movie, who is Asano Tadanobu, and he shows up as a kind of a ghost in some parts, but he doesn't talk. He just does things as the ghost and then disappears. And then there's like a kind of theme of him breeding jellyfish, like bioluminescent jellyfish that can live in fresh water. And he's doing it throughout the movie. It's like it becomes his kind of the thing he does, and he succeeds. Like it's this kind of thing where there's almost nothing happening in the movie. It's very slow paced, very kind of brooding, and just through the whole movie it's that way. But it becomes, there's kind of a happy ending, even though it's not, it's not a great ending, but it is the kind of ending where you feel like the character has progressed, and it's just this really strong character story that moves slowly and in a kind of an interesting pace. And I think it's really probably not well known, but you should look it up. Bright Future is the movie by Kiyoshi Kurosawa as the director, who also, strangely enough, is the director of Sweet Home. If the game on the Famicom, it's based on a movie called Sweet Home. He's the director of that movie also. But yeah, let's continue. We're on my last two movies. We've already been into the top 5. I should have mentioned that, but whatever. Last two movies. This is my number 2 favorite movie, and some people were probably expecting this to be my number 1 movie, but it's actually not. This is Nightbreed. Nightbreed is definitely really high on my list, and I know it's not for everybody. It's the kind of movie where I think people like it, or they don't like it, or they just think it's kind of bad. But there's something about the story of Nightbreed that really kind of connects to me, where I feel it does this really interesting thing where it creates this world of monsters. And you start out in a way that you feel like it does this thing where the monsters are bad. You know, like obviously they're horrible monsters that they try to kill the main character. They're kind of like, you know, he shows up because he wants to be them, and they're just like, fuck you, we're gonna kill you. And he, you know, he escapes, and eventually you start to realize that like it's not that the monsters are bad, it's that they're, you know, they've been kind of subjugated. And it turns out like, you know, by the end of the movie, the humans are the worst people in the movie. The humans in the movie are all worse than any of the monsters. So it's this kind of reverse story where like the monsters are the good guys and the humans are the bad guys. And you know, you kind of, it's kind of the movie that I think speaks to your kind of um, outcast weirdos. I think is probably the audience that's perfect for Nightbreed. Um, it's, you know, you've got the feeling like the main character is this kind of, you know, outcast dude, and he's not like a horrible. He's not like an autist or anything. He's like got a girlfriend. He's just like not fitting in with the way things are going. He's having issues, and you know you know, he's likable. You like him. But he's kind of, you know, brooding, and um, you know, he's got issues, but he's, you know, he's doing stuff, and then you know, you see that he gets kind of put into this shitty situation, and he's got to, you know, figure out how to overcome and become a better person, basically. And that's what happens. Like that's basically the story, but it's set in a backdrop of fucking crazy ass monsters and a serial killer, also played by David Cronenberg, who directed Videodrome. Um, but this is actually the super special edition. It's like a box set with director's cut that was had been waiting for like 20 years. And that sounds like a exaggeration, but I was actually waiting for the director's cut of Nightbreed for 20 years. Like when that movie came out, it was like a movie that I got immediately. I had it on VHS. I have it on DVD. I have it on Blu-ray. It's the kind of movie that when it came out on VHS, there was rumors like, oh, the movie got really changed. There's like 30 minutes or 40 minutes of totally cut footage. It's a totally different movie than the way that it should have been. And that was like, you know, 20 years ago that there were rumors of that. And then like throughout all that time, Clive Barker was saying like, yeah, that footage exists, but like nobody knows how to get it. We can't get our hands on it. It's lost. No one's going to find it. And then like 20 years later, they found the footage. They went and got it and finally made the director's cut of Nightbreed. And I, of course, like ordered this ridiculous super special edition that was like hundreds of dollars. And it's not just this box, but it includes like a poster and like a signed felt thing by Clive Barker. And, you know, this comes with a book. And I've got all the stuff for Nightbreed. I have a book that's like the makeup design effects for Nightbreed. I've got like the script in a book format with extra content. I've got all types of Nightbreed stuff. I have a whole run of the comic. Nightbreed just had like such a big impact on me when it came out, and since then it's a movie I've watched a million times, and I can always go back to Nightbreed. It's always got so much going on, and it's so interesting. And when the new cut came out, it's totally different. It is totally different because it's not much longer. You think like, oh, it's going to be 40 minutes longer. They just added all this stuff. But actually it's not. They cut out a bunch of stuff from the original release and added back in other stuff to take over different parts. So it's only like 10 or 15 minutes longer despite having 40 minutes of new footage. So like the actual content is totally different. The story changes, which is the kind of thing where I think like it means now that I have two different Nightbreed movies I can watch that are similar but different and have totally different endings, which is kind of perfect. So it's the kind of thing like if you had a favorite movie and they just made another version of it that was with all the same actors and all the same stuff going on, but different enough to be considered like different, you just get like part one and a, you know, like 1A and 1B, but they're both awesome. That's how I feel about the new Nightbreed. So yeah, if you haven't seen Nightbreed, you might not like it, but it is one of my favorite movies, and I would definitely recommend seeing it and go into it, expecting to see awesome effects. The kind of makeup effects in this movie are so good. All the monsters. It's like they said in the book that they wanted Nightbreed to be the kind of Star Wars of monster movies, where like if you go to watch a Star Wars movie, there's aliens, all types of weird different aliens everywhere. You go into a cantina and there's like all these things you never see again, but they're just in there. Nightbreed is really like that. You go through the kind of Midian, the world, the kind of haven of the monsters, and you'll walk you through, and you'll see all these kind of weird ass shit going on, monsters in rooms, things, people doing weird stuff, weird kind of like non-human monsters doing who knows what. It's such a just like a great scenes, great kind of movie, and I just love Nightbreed so much. Definitely watch Nightbreed, and don't tell me if you don't like it, because you're gonna be on my no respect list. Vampire Mike. So let's see. Last movie here, my favorite movie of all time. They Live. Now, They Live is a movie that I've seen it a million times, and it's goofy. It stars Roddy Piper. But it's such a, this is a John Carpenter movie I had mentioned earlier. But man, They Live is just, it's so good. And like everybody knows the story now, but when it came out, I remember when They Live came out, it was like #1 in the box office. I saw it in the first week at the theater, and I thought like this movie is awesome. But man, it was #1 at the box office for like a week, and then like it fell off. But man, seeing They Live for the first time, it was like, it was the kind of thing where you're just like, it might have been like the way people felt when they saw The Matrix for the first time. You go in there and you're thinking like, oh, this is going to be just like kind of an alien movie, and it ends up being something totally, and it's kind of an alien movie, but you go in and you find out, like, with the glasses you can see like all the type of hidden messages by the aliens, and like they're controlling things behind the scenes. It's like this kind of interesting thing where there's so much good going on with this movie. And you'd think like, oh, it's just a dumb kind of science fiction movie, but it's a really smart kind of political commentary, and it does a lot of things that the Verhoeven movies do. It doesn't have commercials, but it has a lot of world building about the story by through things like TV shows that people are watching. So like there'll be these long scenes where people are like watching things on TV, and it's building the world. It's building, like, you can kind of get things out of the TV shows, or like the kind of news snippets that you'll hear where like, oh, like the Mexican government has been like deporting Americans who have been sneaking over the border and that kind of thing because there's no jobs and that kind of stuff. Or there's things like, the kind of theme of the show someone is watching is like, this kind of big money hedonism, and these people are watching in a slum, like in a fucking tent city. It's that kind of thing where it's such a good kind of juxtaposition of like how people are being trained to believe in their actual condition, where they're like kind of agreeing with this, like, yeah, I want to be famous and rich, but they're like sitting on, foldable chairs in a tent city watching this and kind of nodding along like, yeah, that's going to be me. And this movie, it's such a good commentary of kind of this, this kind of elite class of people who are, ruling things behind the scenes. And in the movie, it tends to be, it's aliens, but, it's not meant to be aliens so much as like this kind of condemnation of this kind of the 1% kind of rich people doing this kind of shitty things to, the normal people who are just living their shit lives. And, it's just such a good commentary that it still works today. And I've read the original story for They Live, and it's a short story that actually is like not that long. It's like 10 pages, 15 pages or something. It's nothing really like the movie. But I think a lot of the kind of way that this movie works is that Roddy Piper is just so charismatic. You just can't not like him. His character has like some of the most quotable lines in movies ever. You know, it's the point where like Duke Nukem would just ripped off a bunch of lines. It's that kind of thing. And man, if you have this movie, if you have this one specifically, the collector's edition Blu-ray, listen to the commentary with Roddy Piper, because it makes the movie even better. Like I thought this movie couldn't be better, and then I listened to the commentary with Roddy Piper and John Carpenter, and it just makes it all the much better. Roddy Piper is sadly dead, but he was a treasure. I'm sad that he isn't in more movies, and he's been in some good movies that I like that aren't on this list. But like, you know, Hell Comes to Frogtown, you can't not like that movie. It's so good. But I don't know, he was in a bunch of other movies that weren't so great. But Hell Comes to Frogtown is a good one, and of course They Live is a must see. So yeah, that's it. My top 20 movies. It's much longer than Johnny's video because I'm much more, much less concise, I guess. But yeah, that's it. I just wanted to do this as a response. I thought it's fun, interesting kind of thing. And I never talk about movies, so I figured I'd give it a shot. So anyway, I will catch you guys next time.